Hello, I'm Dr. Julie. I'm a board certified psychiatrist, and some very exciting news has come out recently regarding the federal classification of cannabis, marijuana. So let's get into it. So back in August of last year, HHS, that's the Department of Health and Human Services, made a recommendation that marijuana be rescheduled or recategorized from a Schedule 1 drug to a Schedule 3. So drugs, substances, and then certain chemicals that are used to make drugs, they're put into 5 categories. And the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, they call them schedules. So this classification is supposed to be based on the drug having what's called like an acceptable medical use, and what is the drug's potential to be abused or to cause dependency. So that's what their classification is supposed to be based on. So Schedule 5 would be the least restrictive. So if you think about like Robitussin, you can get over the counter, it's a Schedule 5, or Lamodal, that's the medication used for diarrhea. So that would be like Schedule 5. Benzodiazepines, that's medicines like Valium, Ativan, or like Ambien, the sleep medicine, they would be like on Schedule 4. And then testosterone would be an example of a substance in Schedule 3 because it can be, particularly anabolic steroids, but testosterone can be abused. Schedule 2 drugs are going to be drugs with a high potential for abuse and whose use could potentially lead to like a psychological or physical dependence. So when we think about Schedule 2 drugs, that's going to be stimulants. So things psychiatrists prescribe like Adderall or Ritalin, opioids like methadone and fentanyl, they're going to be in Schedule 2. Interestingly, cocaine is also classified as Schedule 2 because it actually does have some acceptable medical uses. And then Schedule 1 substances are considered to be the most dangerous with basically no currently known accepted medical use. So that's where you'll find heroin, ecstasy, LSD. And for right now, cannabis, marijuana is considered to be a Schedule 1 drug, okay? So I think it's pretty obvious and it's been abundantly clear for a long time that cannabis does not belong in the Schedule 1 category. Who's going to fight me on the side that cannabis is more dangerous than fentanyl? Fentanyl Schedule 2. Who's going to make that argument? For one, there are acceptable medicinal medical uses for cannabis. And what stands out to me is Marinol. So Marinol is actually an FDA approved medication that is a synthetic cannabinoid. It's Delta-9 THC. And it's approved to be used to treat severe nausea and vomiting associated with like cancer chemotherapy or for loss of appetite and weight loss in people who have AIDS. Putting cannabis marijuana as a Schedule 1 also makes it more challenging to study the potential benefits or even the risk of cannabis, because when something's a Schedule 1, it's going to be harder for researchers and people to get access to it to actually study. I am definitely not a person who thinks we should be handing out marijuana like candy. It can have severe negative consequences, particularly to the developing adolescent brain. For people who have maybe an increased risk for psychosis at baseline, I've seen people become just completely psychotic after smoking marijuana, become paranoid, have worsened anxiety. But despite all that, this change in the classification has been needed for years. Keeping cannabis as a Schedule 1 drug is just not consistent with the current scientific knowledge of the chemical. And I'm sure there's going to be more to come when this takes effect. So if everything goes through, barring any lawsuits that block this implementation, I think it's supposed to go into effect around January 2025 for what I read. And I'm for one am in full support of this change because I feel like if we are people who are adapting our understanding of things as we get more information, like having a scientific worldview, then we have to adapt how we classify marijuana because it's not consistent with our scientific worldview and how we understand THC at this point in time.